Okay, this is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network. We're just going to get right back into it. Freedom comes from God, not government. And basically, today, that's your choice. Who will you be ruled by? God or government? God allows your spirit to live free. Government demands your body obey and perform. Which will you put your faith in? The spirit or the decaying body? And the institutions of man, which have become as corrupt as they ever have been, because, of course, the natural tendency of bureaucratic power is to assume ever greater power. So, you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free, for God is of the truth. And God's true plan for mankind is freedom, achieved through faith in God, not misplaced in any other entity, which will take your misplaced faith and use it against you to betray you and enslave you to that man or institution or government or philosophy or whatever it is you've misplaced your faith in other than God. So there's your choice. God or government, spirit or body. The supremacy of reason will eventually be the recognized solution. Okay, so what's happening in current events? Well, I guess we got to jump in here and talk about what's going on in New York, where Alvin Bragg's case against Donald Trump for bookkeeping records over how the check to Stormy Daniels was accounted for has completely collapsed. There has been absolutely no testimony at all of any crime. There has never been any explanation of how this ever became a felony that overcame the statute of limitations that had expired on the misdemeanor, because they've never identified any federal crime or state crime that could have been combined with the bookkeeping records accusation to make it a felony. That's never been identified. I've said all along, Donald Trump should never have been allowed to plead to this case because the offense that he was charged with was not sufficiently defined for you to know what you were pleading to. For goodness sake, Alan Dershowitz has been on the internet since the beginning of this saying, where's the crime? What's the crime? There's no crime defined here. You don't plead when the crime hasn't been defined. You ask for a more definitive statement, and you make the prosecution explain what the back end of it is. And the court let him get away with never providing. Oh yeah, it's over there. Just believe us. It's out there in the ether, and we don't have to tell you what it is. So the statute of limitations doesn't apply. Let's go to court. What a bunch of lying pieces of crap. Absolute garbage. Absolute garbage. And as I said, the witnesses that came forward, nobody testified to any crime. Everybody testified to the fact that this is regular bookkeeping that happens all the time. This is how bookkeeping is done. And that there's no crime here, and that there's no election crime in writing the check and paying a woman to go away. So, and today, Michael Cohen, the star witness for the prosecution, got cross-examined, and his testimony just got ripped to shreds. He didn't make any testimony that was meaningful. He didn't testify to any crime or any knowledge or any involvement of Donald Trump. And today he got ripped to shreds and exposed as having lied a number of times in the previous testimony for the prosecution. So this isn't going well. This case just blew up in their face. And I'll tell you what, because there was no crime defined, and because there's never been any testimony or evidence that there was any real crime or that Donald Trump was involved in the commission of a crime, I don't think this trial was ever really about trying to put him on trial for a crime. It was all about election interference. Election interference. That was the basis and the cause of action, to put Donald Trump in a courtroom where he could be slandered and smeared with prostitute nonsense and other ridiculous, absurd, irrelevant, and immaterial fraud and lies, slander, and libel that they could get the media to exaggerate and amplify to slander Donald Trump and make him look completely, how you say, make him look bad. And that's what they were trying to do right from the beginning. It's just to keep him in the courtroom, off of the campaign trail, not able to campaign while Biden is out there making a fool of himself. And they keep Donald Trump locked up in the courtroom and megaphone amplify all the slander and libel that they throw at him from the Democrat DA's office under the Democrat judge who's letting it all go. Irrelevant and immaterial, he's letting it go because there was never any intent to try and actually convict him for a crime. And I don't think he's going to get convicted because even though this is probably a mostly Democrat jury, my understanding is there's a couple of attorneys on the jury. And this has gone so badly and so ridiculous that I don't think there's any attorney in the country who thinks they could keep themselves credible as an attorney if they voted to convict. So I think this is going to hang the jury. They ain't going to get a conviction. They never really wanted one. What they wanted to do was to interfere in the election, slander Trump, libel him, and keep him off the campaign trail for as long as they can. And as soon as this trial's over, they'll fire up another one and try to do the same thing. And of course, part of preventing him from campaigning and being able to defend himself goes with that unconstitutional gag order where he's not allowed to talk about the prejudice of the judge or the involvement in the conflict of interest that the judge has with his daughter raising money off the trial and how it results ultimately. So this is just absolutely crazy. Like I say, Donald Trump should never have been allowed to plead to these charges. He should have said, what am I pleading to? A misdemeanor that's expired or a felony? And if it's a felony, please explain to me how it becomes a felony when the misdemeanor is expired and there is no other charge. And it can't be a state election law because there was no state election. It was a federal presidential election. And there can't be any federal campaign violation because the state has no authority or jurisdiction over federal campaign law, only the federal courts. And they didn't prosecute because there was never any indictment filed by the DOJ. So there is no federal record to use in the state court. The state can't make up a federal record because it's got no jurisdiction there. So he never should have been allowed to plead. Well, this case has completely collapsed. As will the other cases, because the January 6th case is based on his saying, let's march to the Capitol peacefully and patriotically, let your voices be heard. Now, that's not inciting insurrection or a riot, and he's going to get off on that. In Florida, he has presidential immunity, the classified documents, he's going to get off on that. I forget her name, the woman that got the judgment on Trump, that's going to get overturned on appeal. That was nonsense, too. How do you get to $80 million for an assault? You got to be kidding me. 30 years later, you didn't report it, you didn't talk about it. 30 years later, you get $80 million? Yeah, right. Right. Yeah, check. You absolutely got $80 million damage 30 years ago. What a piece of crap. What a piece of crap. Okay, so Biden is scared to death. How can you tell? He's adopting Donald Trump's policies. That's how you can tell. First, he said he was going to start building some border wall when he told the people, well, not 1 foot of border wall will be built under my administration. Whoops, that didn't work. And then he condemned Donald Trump for his policies on China. Oh, it's xenophobic to want to put tariffs on China. Well, guess what? Joe Biden has just announced tariffs on China. He wants to put in 100% tariff on EVs. You know, the EVs that he told you should buy to switch to the electrical, and now they're doubling the price of it for you because the cheapest EVs were from China. That was the only affordable EV option there was for the American people. The American EVs cost somewhere between 40,000, 34,000 at the low end, and 120,000 at the top end. Who can afford that? The Chinese EVs were probably coming in around 20K. That was an affordable car, but with a 100% tariff, it's 40,000. Doesn't look so attractive now. I might have wanted that little VW type thing for 20, but for 40, no, 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 not going to do that. So your cheap option for EVs, which the government is pushing, just got taken away by the government pushing them. Oh, isn't it marvelous to have consistent policy and completely senile and dementia-ridden political leaders who don't know what they're doing and are 100% incompetent in everything they do. But at least he's admitted Donald Trump was right. Because guess what? Donald Trump is right about everything else, too. Biden has been wrong about everything. About the Ukraine, about Russia, about Afghanistan, about Gaza, about Israel, about crime, about immigration, about fentanyl, about the border, about inflation, about student loans, about buying votes, about weaponizing the Justice Department, the FBI, the CIA, the EPA against not criminals. No, they're walking free, no bail, no charges. No, not them. Your political opposition. Go after the political opposition. Catholic parents. Catholics who oppose abortion and parents who oppose transgender school agenda and curriculum. Those are the criminals you should label radical and extreme and go after them. Oh, and anybody who mentions MAGA or bought something from the MAGA store or the outdoor camping stores or anything else we think means people who would like to get away from the government and be free. Yeah, real good. It's the Democrats that have turned Nazi, folks. You haven't noticed that? Joe Biden is the one that tried to vaccinate everyone. Joe Biden is the one that fired people, the frontline workers who had gone for 2 years without vaccinations. But if you don't get the vaccination now, you're fired. They fired the people that saved us. It's Joe Biden that's violating the Constitution by passing out money to foreigners and student loans. Why won't anybody take up the solution for the student loan problem? It is so simple, I can't believe it. All you have to do is put the student loan money back into the bankruptcy courts as something that is eligible for being controlled, managed, and disposed of or discharged by the bankruptcy court. The problem is it can't be discharged. If you put it back into dischargeability in the bankruptcy courts, anyone who can't make the student loan can file the bankruptcy and take the consequences of a bankruptcy filing without anybody being passed the burden that they didn't assume and shouldn't have to pay, which is what happened when Biden simply forgives it without legal involvement. Bankruptcy can discharge it, and it doesn't get paid. And why don't you go ahead and take some of the grant money from the universities that are creating all of these graduates that can't get jobs to pay back their student loans because you let them major in black studies or gender dysphoria or socialism, the path to the future, or all the other nonsensical degrees that lead to the reality that you got about 50% of today's college graduates for the last 10 years working at jobs minimum wage. Minimum wage, fast food, clerking, because the degrees they have aren't employable degrees. So they can't pay the student loans because, minimum wage is just enough to get by on, especially when they impose economic hardship for you and bump the cost of living up while destroying the quality of life. So There you go. And whoop, back in five. Okay. Okay, this is Thomas Freed on the Liberty Works Radio Network, and I'm just going to get right back into this because I've been spending way too much time on each of the individual topics. At the end of the first segment, I meant to throw in that the Simple Truth About Income Tax, that 75-page PDF I was telling you about, is only $4 over at irszoom.com. So find your way over there, pick yourself up a copy, and get informed, start getting educated. All right, so Joe Biden and Donald Trump have all of a sudden, Biden says, have agreed to debate each other. And they came to terms pretty quickly. First debate on CNN, I think it said June 28th, which is like in 6 weeks. And the other sometime in September on, I forget, one of the other networks. But, that should be interesting because, we'll have to see. There's a chance the court in New York, if Trump gets convicted, would want to put him in jail. And then they'd be really interfering with the election by not letting the candidates show up for the debate. So, as I said, though, before, I don't think they're going to get a conviction there. So that's probably a moot point. But they've agreed to vote. But Biden has demanded terms that seem to me a little bit cowardly. He doesn't want any audience because he knows Trump feeds off of it. The audience will be for him. So he wants no audience. He wants isolated, and he wants no live microphones when the other person is speaking. And as I recall, in the first debates, Donald Trump actually bailed Joe Biden out a couple of times because Biden was losing his train of thought and didn't know what to say, and Trump interrupted him, and that let Biden off the hook. Didn't make him look like an idiot. He couldn't keep a line of thought from one moment to the next, which is one of his big problems, isn't it? So, no live mics, no interruptions, no audience. God, he probably wants everything in isolation booths, the cone of silence for each candidate. That'll help Joe keep standing for an hour. Okay. Oh, he also doesn't want any third-party candidates. No RFK Jr. at the debate stage. And RFK says he's going to qualify according to the rules. And that, I think, means he'll be on the ballot in a certain number of states, so that technically he would have to be included in a debate, or he's going to sue to stop it and get an order to be included. So Biden doesn't want that. So if RFK is going to be there, we'll see if Joe shows up or not. I was going to say that Trump should debate the other candidates without Joe Biden. Let's have a debate. If the president doesn't want to debate the other candidates and leave Joe out. That would be great. You could invite, of course, RFK and the Green Party candidate, too. And I'm not sure there'd be anybody else, but it would be 3 people debating and the president wouldn't be there. What a coward. So, this is all leading up to the Democratic convention in Chicago in August, and I'm telling you, this is looking like it's going to be a real riot, doesn't it? Oh, that's right. Maybe it's not that funny. In '68, they burned Chicago down. It kind of looks like that's what's coming this year, too, because the radical left is pretty upset with Joe over Palestine, Hamas, and Gaza. So they're going to be there. They're going to be out in full force, and Chicago's going to be a mess. And they don't prosecute crime in Chicago. So what are they going to do? Pick them up, take them 8 miles away, drop them off, and let them work their way back within an hour to be there the next morning again? Should be a laugh riot. So, Joe Biden is, what can you say? The man is dementia ridden. He's senile. He's a fool. He's an idiot. He's a pathological liar. He's bragging about his economy, which has been good for the ultra wealthy, Wall Street and the stock exchange, and illegal aliens. All of the jobs have gone to illegal aliens. Full-time jobs of citizens are dropping. The full-time jobs being picked up are low-paying, going to illegal aliens, and the part-time jobs are going to illegal aliens and to Americans who have to take a second job or go back to work as seniors to make ends meet. It's a terrible economy. Main Street is dying. Joe doesn't see anything except the stock exchange numbers, which are a little out of touch with reality. And at some point, reality is going to connect, and the two parallel worlds are going to have to come together. Because right now, Wall Street's living in a different reality than Main Street. So Biden is lying on TV again, saying, oh, inflation was at 9% when I came into office, and we brought it down to 3%. This man must think everybody in America is just plain stupid. He is a pathological liar. When he took office in January of 2020, the inflation rate was 1.4%, and it had been below 2% for the previous 6 months. This man is a pathological liar. He ran inflation up to allegedly 9.9%. But I'm telling you, I've been telling you for a number of years, the inflation rate is a baked statistic. They've manipulated the CPI to take out the products that increased in price so that the inflation rate appears to be artificially low, and there's 10% missing from their declared number. You want proof? Okay. Well, let's take the inflation and let's measure it under Joe Biden's administration with the two rawest form of measurements there are: money and energy. When Joe Biden took office in 2020, the price of gold, real money, was $1,600 an ounce. Today, the price is almost $2,400. That's $800 in 3 1/3 years. Almost a half. 3.5 years. 50% over 3.5 years. Now let's divide that and call it 4 years even, and you get a 12.5% inflation rate. Only it hasn't been 4 years, it's only been 3.5, so it's probably a point higher at 13.5%. So the price of money tells you that the true inflation rate over the last 4 years has been 13.5%. And the price of a lot of products in the store will tell you the same thing. And the price of energy will tell you exactly that, 50%, which we're going to look at in just a second. So the inflation rate has been running at 13.5%, and I've told you they hide about 10%. You deduct 10%, you get 3.5%, the inflation rate they're telling you it's at right now. It's not 3.5, it's 13.5. They're hiding 10% through the manipulated statistic. It's a baked statistic. It's not an honest statistic. It's meant to deceive insidiously. The true number is 10 points higher at 13.5%, and you immediately see that by using the price of raw, real money gold. And compare the gold to the value of the notes. 1,600 to 2,400. 800 points against 1,600, 50%. 50. Can we find confirmation of this? Why, yes, we can. Let's look at the price of gasoline, the other major commodity. Energy, which you can use to gauge the inflation. When Joe Biden took office, the price of gasoline was $2.30, pretty much, $2.20 to $2.30 as an average. It was actually like $2.10 here on the Atlantic coast, but $2.30. And today, the price is $3.45. That's up $1.15 from $2.30. That's 50%. That's the same number we got for gold. So both the money and the price of energy have gone up over the last 4 years, 3.5 years, 12.5%. Across 4 years, that's 13.5%. They're hiding 10%, 3.5. Both gold and energy give you the 13.5% that is the true figure for inflation. And they both wind back to show you how 10% is being hidden through the baked statistic that they're presenting to measure it. It's kind of like the employment numbers or the unemployment numbers, right? The unemployment rate is down like around 3.5%, 4%. Oh, isn't that great? 3.8% unemployment. Well, wait a minute. Your employment participation rate is only 62.5%. 38% of your population isn't even trying to get a job. They're all unemployed. How do you get a 3.5% inflation rate from 38% of the population being unemployed? I'm sorry, but that's a baked statistic too. That's an absolute lie. The unemployment rate is much, much higher than 3.8%, and it has been for a while. Like I said, this economy is working for the illegal aliens, not the Americans. So there's how you calculate the true inflation rate. And if you go to the store, a number of products have risen 50%. Almost all of them have risen at least 20%, and most of them average out with a 30 to 35% increase in price at the stores. So that just all matches up with what the 4-year annual tells you. Joe Biden has been an economic catastrophe. He's been an immigration catastrophe. He's been a law enforcement catastrophe. He's been a foreign policy catastrophe. He's been an economic policy catastrophe. He's been an energy policy catastrophe. He's been a cartel problem catastrophe. The man has been a catastrophe on every single thing he and his administration has done, and his administration cabinet are all just as incompetent as he is. All just mind-boggling how incompetent these people are. And of course, Biden had more COVID deaths than Trump. He had more COVID dementia than Trump, firing people, mandating experimental vaccines, which it now turns out are injuring millions of people all over the planet. He lost 11 embassies. Joe Biden has lost and closed 11 embassies in 3.5 years. Trump got 3 peace accords, the Abraham Accords, 3 peace treaties signed in the Middle East between Israel and Saudi Arabia. 3 peace treaties. Everybody say nobody can do it. Nobody had done it for 65 years. Trump did it in 4 years. Trump did it. No wars. Putin at bay, North Korea at bay, China at bay, Iran at bay, Hamas at bay, the Houthis at bay, ISIS wiped out, the Taliban under control, Afghanistan secured, a base to operate from militarily to control the entire region. Trump just had it all, and Biden destroyed every bit of it and gave away $91 billion. And how much in student aid? Another $150 billion? Let's just round it off at $1 trillion or $2, huh? Because that's what they gave away. They gave away 20 years of investment in a stable Afghanistan, an ally, a stable government, a converting society where women had some freedom and some rights for the first time in recorded history. And Biden threw it all in the garbage can and walked away for the sake of withdrawing the last 5,000 troops. And now China controls the Bagram Air Base. Biden is an idiot. Absolute idiot. Absolute idiot. Okay, I think we're going to be coming up on the end of the show here in a bit. Remember, God's true plan for mankind is freedom. Get over to taxfreedom.com. Get educated, get informed, share the information with friends, neighbors, family, and employers. Claim exempt on your W-4. Take home your paycheck. You need the money in these times of economic hardship. Don't let the government steal it and enslave you. None of the money's going in the Treasury anyway. It's all going to the Federal Reserve Bank, a private corporation. Why is a private corporation getting the benefit of your tax check when the law requires it to be deposited in the Treasury? Go ahead. Think about it. I'll be back next week with more.